The Bouncer for the Sony PlayStation 2 is a 3D beat-em-up. Before we even get into it, I'm going to go ahead and stipulate that the 3D beat-em-up is a genre that is hard to pull off. Even for companies that have years and years, tons of experience with this genre, the transition to the 3D beat-em-up proved challenging for many. This game is a launch or near-launch title for the PlayStation 2, I believe, and I remember there being quite a bit of controversy about its short length, but being familiar with the beat-em-up genre, an hour-and-a-half long game is pretty standard for that type of game. So one of the first things I noticed is on the save screen, it tells you how many times you've beat the game. So you are intended to play through this game many, many times. So I decided to give this game a chance. I found it for $1 on LetGo, which is one of those apps where people buy, sell, trade stuff. I got it thrown in. I was buying 2 games for $5 and it's like, I ain't paying $5 for this. It's a notoriously bad game. I'm just sort of curious about it. I give you $1 for it. I don't think you'll get much better from anyone else for this particular title. And he's like, okay, that's fine. So I got the game, and it was finally time for me to sit down and play it. And the first thing that really grabbed a hold of me was how poorly it plays. And after you get a small section of gameplay, you're treated to twice as much time in cutscenes. You know, I'm a Metal Gear Solid fan, so I'm no stranger to here's a little bit of gameplay, and here's your reward, a badass cutscene. And this is from Squaresoft, you know, at the height of their game. So, you know, I wasn't expecting it to be necessarily my thing, but what I got was just some really bizarre... It's not that it's a bad story, it's the girl gets kidnapped, there's something about a satellite. Turns out, you know, the girl's a robot, and that sucks, I guess. Check out this cutscene.
We've wasted enough time on them.
What is it?
Huh?
You recognize that Black Panther?
No.
Let's get going. We're gonna miss the train.
Yeah.
Do you recognize that Panther? It just really blew me away with how bizarre that is. So you keep playing these little segments of gameplay followed by 2 to 3 times as much cutscene. So it's just, you know, it sounds like there's cool stuff going on in this game. You have to get to the train, and you get on the train, and the train crashes and explodes. After that, there's a really tense segment where you have to run down a corridor straight towards the camera as blast doors slowly drop. I think this was intended to get the old adrenaline pumping, but it really didn't do much other than like frustrate me with the lack of camera control. But again, this came out in that time, the early 2000s, before, you know, the rise of the console first-person shooter really cemented the dual analog stick control method. So I'll let that slide. It, you know, only came into play every now and then that it really frustrated me with the camera. Something else that frustrated me, and I don't have the manual for this game, so when I'm looking through the menus to figure out how to do moves, it says, you know, to do this move, hold ES plus MS. I don't know, but my controller's only got triangle, square, X, circle, L1, L2, you know, so I would have appreciated that. But yeah, you know, so I hop on GameFAQs and I figure out what's what, and manage to do some of the moves, but it's just the moves that you purchase with your bouncer points are just hold L1 and then hit, you know, square, triangle, circle. So there's really not a lot of depth to the moves. There's no, like, at least I couldn't figure out how to do it, if there is any sort of depth to it. And then another thing I didn't care for in regards to the gameplay, once you get close to an enemy, your guy kind of locks on to them, and you gotta, like, you know, walk away from them before you can move freely away from the enemies. So a lot of the times it's like, There's an escort mission that I kept getting my butt kicked because, you know, the lack of nuance to the gameplay. I couldn't really figure out a good way to manage enemies. I mean, this is no Streets of Rage, right? So I decided I'm just going to run around these robots. That works for the most part until you get too close and then you just kind of got to scuttle around them. So that is kind of frustrating. You play through the little segments, and after each fighting segment, you get to allocate some bouncer points, or whatever BP stands for. I call them bouncer points. You get to allocate your points and beef up a stat. I saved up and bought the most expensive move, and then I used it in the final fight against the big bad guy, and the move sucked real bad. It's just like, it locks you into doing the 7-kick combo, and then this guy just, you know, wrecks you. So I was like, After I died a couple times trying to use that, I just took those points, dumped them into defense, health, and power, and then didn't have a problem. So I did beat the game, and then I started going through it again a second time, and I did find a way to make the game more enjoyable. Skip every cutscene. When you're not watching, like when you get a 3-minute gameplay segment followed by a 7-minute cutscene, it just really drags it out. But if you just skip every cutscene, in a remarkably short amount of time, you'll get far and away through the game. It did increase my enjoyment. So the intent here is to go through the game multiple times with all 3 of your characters. Your main guy, Scion, he kind of looks like Sora from Kingdom Hearts picked up a couple of dudes in a leather fetish bar. That's kind of what your crew looks like. The guy I played through the game with, Ko, just has this really bizarre shark-like face that I found really off-putting, and these retarded tribal tattoos. And then I tried playing as Volt, the big guy with the devil horns, and I don't know, there's like some sort of Final Fantasy cactus on his jacket. I guess that's cool if you like Final Fantasy or something. He was kind of a slow, lumbering retard and kind of hard to play with. So I ended up using Ko mostly, and then the second playthrough I used Scion, and he plays okay. So I mean, that's your standard fighting brawler 3D beat 'em up crew. You got your small and fast, your medium, well-rounded, and your big slow idiot. I usually go for the well-rounded guy or the fast guy, depending on the game. So I mean, it's okay. Like, if you found this game for $1 and you've heard things about it and you want to formulate your own opinion, I guess that's a reason to add it to your collection. But I really was not blown away with it. I like to go into these games and give them the benefit of the doubt. The main criticism I always heard about it back in the day is that it's too short, but it's an arcade-style game, which tends to be short, and you go through, you try to get high score, you know, it's your replay value, right? I didn't find that here. Here's one more thing I forgot to mention, one more note. When you die, it takes you back to the main menu, and you have to reload your save. And then once you reload your save, you gotta watch all those cutscenes, or thankfully there's a skip option. You can just skip all the way through them. So there's really no penalty. They may as well have just included a retry or continue and saved me what feel like 2 or 3 minutes, you know. So like the end boss really is the only spot where I had a lot of difficulty. There's a 2-phase fight. The first part was not a big deal, and then the second part, you got a lot more aggressive, and your AI buddies don't really do much to help you. You know, I probably died on that 10 times, so if it takes like 2 minutes to load the save, skip the cutscenes, you know, you just wasted 20 minutes of my time for effectively the same thing as if they just gave me a retry option, because there's no penalty to dying, other than you have to waste a bunch of time getting back to where you were, because you can save after each gameplay segment. So, I don't know, I thought that was an interesting choice. Overall, I would not recommend this game to anyone. I would say go ahead and pass this one on by unless you've been curious about it, and you can find it for $1. Like I had about $1's worth of fun, but would I have made an effort to play through the game 1.5 times? Gee, I don't know. But I also find myself wanting to go back and beat the game with each of the 3 characters. I did a little bit of poking around on the internet, and I believe the story is different. There's little differences depending on which missions you do with which characters. The game does give you the option to pick a character each time gameplay pops up, so you don't have to pick a guy and go through the whole game. It's just, I found that guy to be the least difficult to play as, so I stuck with Ko. But that was me and my experience. Then the next playthrough I went with the main guy, Scion. And you know, I would comment more on the story, but it's not that good. Some rich guy built a satellite to blow up a hospital because the doctor wasn't in, so they couldn't save his sister, and then he put his sister's memories in a robot, and then the robot goes out and like falls in love with this bouncer in a bar that literally no one goes to. I've never seen a single patron in the bar. There's 3 bouncers working in this completely empty bar, so I don't know. I didn't see any bartenders, so I don't know what's going on there. That didn't really add up. I don't know. I'd go ahead and give this one a pass unless your morbid curiosity draws you towards this title. Now, there are some other modes. You have the Versus mode, I believe it's called. You got a 4-player battle mode. Now, I do have a multi-tap for my PS2, but what I definitely do not have is 3 people willing to play the bouncer with me. So I didn't even try to dust that off. But you can set up the computer to control the other characters, and I imagine through multiple playthroughs you can fill out this roster. That's how many people I unlocked after the first mode. All the bosses you encountered in Echidna. Oh man, what a bizarre character. So this is your first boss character, Echidna, whose head looks like Patrick from SpongeBob, I think. And you just wail on her and she goes flying like a rag doll, and it's ridiculous. So yeah, there's a 4-player mode. I don't know. I can't imagine finding 3 other people to sit down and play this with, especially in the year 2018. But that's cool, you know, that there's other modes in it, you know, get your $1 worth. And then you got your survival mode, which is just, you know, waves of enemies, how far can you go through the game. That was kind of cool. I spent a little bit of time with that. So overall, there's really nothing remarkable here. It's just kind of an interesting historical piece, I suppose. It being one of the launch or near launch PlayStation 2 titles that I'd always been curious about. Now I've played through it and seen just about everything the game has to offer, and I don't think I'm going to be pulling this back off the shelf anytime soon. But you never know. Would I recommend it? No, I'd say go ahead and pass unless you really want to see it, or you find it for $1 and you just really want to beat a game because you keep track of what games you have and have not beaten yet in your collection in a spreadsheet like I do. So that's really the best part of this title, is that I have marked off another game as having been beat in my collection.
Game over.